Hi, my name is Javier Albornoz. Today we're going to be talking about pitch shifting in Pro Tools. Pitch shifting refers to raising the pitch and increasing rate of playback, or it could be lowering the pitch while decreasing rate of playback, or it could refer to pitch shifting independently of speed of playback. So when you're raising pitch and increasing rate of playback or lowering pitch while decreasing rate of playback, the audio is basically responding in the way that lowering or raising the speed of a tape deck would give the results you would get from that. So in that case, if you've ever played around with that kind of thing, you know the sound you get, the faster speech, but also the kind of high-pitched chipmunk sound or the very slowed down speech where the pitch lowers, but you're also lowering the speed of the playback. Now, what happens if you would like to raise or lower the pitch of your audio independent of that speed of playback? So we'll take a look at all three today. I have a Pro Tools session open with several audio tracks and of course our master fader. So right now all of our tracks are muted. So I want to go to my edit window. I'm going to widen the track we'll be working with and unmute. You can see here that first thing we want to make sure is that all of our routing is going to our master fader, and our master fader itself is going to our monitor path shown here by the speaker icon. I can see that there's one track here that's routed to a bus, so that one I would want to just make sure it goes to our master fader. Otherwise, we wouldn't actually be hearing it when we work with that track. So let's get started with this narration track we've been using as an example.
The purpose of this virtual reality experiment is to show that standing forests are very important for the survival of indigenous peoples who depend on natural resources.
Great. So what I'm going to do is go up here to our Audio Suite drop-down menu. Now, what we see here is a list similar to what you see when you're working with your insert effects and you're trying to add a plugin. So you get the same kind of categories here, but what I'm going to do is load something that we're going to do offline. We're going to apply our processing offline and rendering the audio file. So we go to our pitch shift drop down menu and we're going to choose the plugin called Time Shift. Now, the reason it's called Time Shift is because in this plugin we actually have the option to do both. We can shift time and we can shift pitch. So if we change the rate of playback here under time, we are performing time stretching in the same way that you can time stretch using your TCE, time compression and expansion tool. But what you're getting here is the ability to actually then control the pitch independent of that or both at the same time. Now, as I mentioned, it is an offline process, so you will click render and just wait a few seconds until a new audio file is created with the results that you're setting here in your plugin. So the first thing we're going to do is let's change the pitch of this audio file concurrent with the timing of the audio file. So essentially what we're doing is what I mentioned as the traditional way before digital audio editing, before these capabilities we have, where essentially you were just speeding up the rate of playback of your tape deck. So by default, your pitch was going to raise when you sped it up and lower when you slowed it down. So in this case, to achieve this, we have to change the percentage of both the time and pitch over here. So let's go up by 50% on both and see what the results are. Now again, we can't just hit play and here are results. We do have to click render. Now you see that our file shortened because we did increase the rate of playback. Let's hear it.
The purpose of this virtual reality experiment is to show that standing forests are very important for the survival of indigenous peoples who depend on natural resources.
So again, this is the sort of chipmunk effect that you get where the playback is faster and also the pitch is faster. So I'm going to undo that. Our file goes to its original length. And now let's do the same thing, but let's go down by about 50% on both. So this is the equivalent of taking your tape deck and just slowing down that playback. Let's render. It's going to increase the length of the audio file because we are working with time as well as pitch. And let's hear that back.
The purpose of this virtual reality experiment.
So you get the idea. So again, that's the traditional tape sort of results before we were able to control them independently using digital audio processing or digital signal processing. So let's get these back to their defaults. Let's undo what we did to our audio file. So we've got our original back.
The purpose of this virtual reality experiment is
Great. Okay, so let's see what happens if we leave our timing alone, because what we're interested in is really just changing the pitch while retaining that same timing. So let's go down here and only work with our pitch section, and transposition means that we're going to change the pitch in musical terms. So you can see both. It's giving you a percentage, but also musical semitones here. So let's increase. We're going to raise the pitch. Let's go back up to that 50%. It ends up being about 7 semitones or 7 half steps raised in pitch, but we are not going to affect timing, and you're going to see how the length of the file when I click render is not going to be affected. We render, and let's hear our results.
The purpose of this virtual reality experiment is to show that standing forests are very important for the survival of indigenous peoples.
So let's undo and hear the original.
the purpose of this virtual reality experiment.
So you can see how we raise the pitch while not affecting the playback speed. So let's do the same thing and go down 50% while not affecting the speed. And let's hear the results.
The purpose of this virtual reality experiment is to show that standing forests are very important for the survival of indigenous peoples who depend on natural resources.
Great. And let's go back to our original. Now, what's interesting here and very useful is that you actually can do them at completely different percentages independent of each other. So for example purposes and sort of to mimic that tape deck kind of result with analog tape, we were doing the same amount of speed and pitch increase. But what if we wanted to, let's say, lower the pitch by a few semitones, but then actually speed up the playback a bit? Let's see what we get when we render that.
The purpose of this virtual reality experiment is to show that standing forests are very important for the survival of indigenous peoples who depend on natural resources.
So interesting results. You've got the lower pitch, but also it's a faster pace than the original. Let's hear the original.
The purpose of this virtual reality experiment is to
And there you see what kind of manipulation we can get here of both time and pitch. I'm going to close this window, go back to our audio suite, go to the pitch shift category here, and we're going to open up a different plugin. It's called Pitch 2. And now what we're going to get with this one is we're going to be able to change the pitch of your audio, but you're getting this display as a keyboard. So this is meant for example, if you're working with a music track where you know the starting pitch, then this is going to help you transpose by a certain amount. Or even if you don't know the starting pitch and haven't taken the time to figure out what it is, you're going to be able here to know that, okay, I would like to transpose down by a fourth or a fifth or up a fifth, up a sixth, and you can just visually see it in a keyboard. But again, you do have the same percentage ratio control as well as your semitone, and sense is the measurement of a finer degree of resolution than your semitones or half steps. So let's say that we wanted to take this, increase it by up a fifth. You can see that that's more or less that same ratio we were just working with. And here we are going to be only affecting pitch. We render. The timing was not affected because we are working independently with pitch. So let's hear the playback.
The purpose of this virtual reality experiment is to show that standing
Same pace, much higher pitch. Let's undo that and close our window. So now let's look at another common use of pitch shifting. I've made sure to mute my other tracks that I was previously working with, my narration track, and I've gone down here and unmuted this track called Song Original. Now, what I have here is a recording of an actress singing a song which she came up with on the spot and sang a cappella. So there wasn't really any specific pitch center that she was working with. And when music was written to after the recording, there were some intonation issues that needed to be addressed and corrected. So let's take a listen to that track before any processing is done.
The best thing to devour for their breakfast hour is food packed with power, something healthy and sour.
So you can hear that there's definitely a tune in there, but there's some intonation issues. And when we unmute our track down here called music and play it back, you're going to hear that the music reflects the harmony that the singer was going for, and the melody is there, but there are intonation issues that definitely need to be addressed. Let's hear that back.
The best thing to devour for their breakfast hour is food packed with power, something healthy and sour.
So for the most part, she's about a half step lower, it sounds like, than she should be. And then there's a couple points where she gets on. But let's take a look at how we can try to correct all of that. So what I have here, which I'm going to unbypass and open up the plugin view, is a pitch editor plugin. And there are several of these, and they all work in more or less the same way. They do work with pitch shifting while not affecting the rate of playback. So there is no time stretching involved. It is pitch shifting independent of time because we're not interested in changing the performance and her as far as her timing and her rate, her rhythm and that kind of thing. We're really just looking at pitch right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is select the audio event that I'm working with, and I'm going to go down here and I'm going to press record so that we can record the pitches that this audio file is at right now in its original form.
The best thing to devour for their breakfast hour is food packed with power, something healthy and sour.
Now, I did have my music track playing back, But because this insert is only on this song original track with only my vocal track, you can see it isn't going to affect what I'm doing here with this plugin. But so that we can right now just work with only our vocal track, I'll mute that for now. And so let's take a look at what we've got here. So you can see that essentially in our Y section here of our graph, we're looking at pitch. We're looking at essentially a keyboard roll, it's commonly referred to, where our keyboard is sort of lined up in this up and down form. And you can even see here, it is differentiating sort of the white keys and black keys as you would see on a keyboard or piano. And they are indicated. You've got your A sharp or B flat, B, C, etc. and what octave we're on, A4, and up here starts 5th octave, so we've got C5. So along the x-axis, you can see what it is just our timeline matching with our Pro Tools timeline. So if we take a closer look at the results of our recording, essentially what happened is that the pitch that this singer was singing were translated here into the plugin in a form that we can actually manipulate. So if I take any one of these little broken up notes, I can actually select them and move them, as you can see here. And I'm actually changing the pitch. I'm shifting the pitch to a different point where I think it might work better. And you can hear that when I hold and then I change pitch and even go higher, we're essentially just modifying each individual pitch of individual words that she spoke, that the software divided up. So let's work now with getting this to be in the key that we want to be in. So I know that the key that we're aiming for is actually B flat major. So if you look here, you can see that she sort of started here on an A, ended on an A, and there's a lot of stuff here that doesn't fit diatonically in the key of B flat major, which would include the notes B flat or A sharp, C, D, E flat or D sharp, F, G, and etc. up here to A and our next A sharp or B flat. So we're going to go back down and we're going to inspect. Now, when we hear this song, it is a simple diatonic tune within the major key where, let's play back a little bit of it.
The best thing to devour for.
So right there in the beginning, you can already tell it's essentially just starting on the 7th, the best thing, and that's your root. So I think that that thing should really be the note falling on our A sharp or B flat, right? So before that, we're on the 7th of the scale. So we're okay on an A. But this is where it starts to get a little funny. This really best thing, B flat, C, D, D, B flat, C, D, E flat, E flat. That's sort of where I'm hearing it should be falling at. So definitely we're not going to want this on a C sharp. Let's just move that up to a C for now. We'll hear back what that sounds like. Thing to devour. This might want to be on a D, but you can see how it did land on a D, but a little bit low. And we needed to be more centered in the pitch. Let's hear that back.
The best thing to devour for.
So let's hear that back with the music.
The best thing to devour for their.
So we're getting closer. Already with those first few notes, you can tell it's already making a difference.
The best thing to devour for their breakfast.
But we're losing it once we get past over here, where I do think that these should come up here to a D. This should be living in the range of C. Let's see what that's sounding like.
The best thing to devour for their breakfast.
So actually,
Or
really we should be going back to B flat, then C, then D. So let's hear that
the
back.
best thing to devour for their breakfast hour.
This might want to go up to a D. Think where we're hitting
Hour.
here, where she hit just a low E, sort of a flat E.
Hour.
This should really be an E flat. Let's see. Maybe this will end up as a D or E flat, depending on what word that
The
is.
best thing to devour for their breakfast hour is food pack.
So this might be better as a D.
The best thing to devour for their breakfast hour is food pack.
Great. So you can already see how we've got about half of it in line and it's getting there. So we can see here that on this upper note, she hit somewhere in the F sharp range, and that's definitely not what we're looking for. It's not diatonic to B flat major. So this really should be an F, probably an E flat there. Let's hear back some with the music.
The best thing to devour for their breakfast hour is food packed with
So it sounds like we want to maybe repeat this, have her repeat that. This is probably an E flat, maybe a D. Let's try this as a C.
The best thing to devour for their breakfast hour is food packed with power.
So now we're getting there. You can see how it's coming together. If I disable this plugin, let's hear the difference.
The best thing to devour for their breakfast hour is food packed with power.
And play it back with the plugin.
The best thing to devour for their breakfast hour is food packed with power.
So we're really getting there. It's making a huge difference. And there's definitely a lot of finessing that can happen here. There's a few things that you see here. This curving, what this is telling you here is the variation in pitch. So essentially, it ends up being the singer's vibrato. And you can actually correct that. And individually, it might need to be corrected so there's maybe not as much variation, right? There's also this sort of glissando or portamento that happens in between some of the pitches. So some of that stuff you might want to correct. You can see here that if I turn down vibrato, I'm actually decreasing, or in this case now I'm increasing how much of that variation over time of the pitch is going on. There's also correction strength and speed, which is going to determine sort of how much correction is happening, and too much of it and you get that sort of auto-tune sound that a lot of contemporary artists use to create an effect beyond actually correcting pitch, which is more what we're doing now in this case. So I'm going to close this up and I'm going to actually mute this track, and we're going to play back a track. Let me bypass this for now. We're going to play back this track I have called Song Processed. We'll play it back without the music at first, and what this is a render that I have made after I've gone through and in a very detailed way done exactly the same process that we were looking at here, but I've exported it to a finished track that we can play back and check out the results. So right now my only track that is unmuted is Song Processed. Let's get it a little bit wider here in our edit window and play that back.
The best thing to devour for their breakfast hour is food packed with power, something healthy and sour.
And you can also hear how there's a bit of reverb added in there, so that was just some processing done after the fact. Let's play it back with our music track and hear the results.
The best thing to devour for their breakfast hour is food packed with power, something healthy and sour.
So you can hear that's a huge improvement from the version that was unprocessed and without any correction to pitch. So definitely there's a lot that can be done with these pitch editing plugins.